Hey, welcome to Roaming Minds. I'm Carlos.
I'm AJ, and here we talk about the thoughts that kept us out of all the really good schools. You know, those quiet spirals, the questions that keep you up at night, and the trials and tribulations that we all face as human beings.
This show is part reflection, part reminder. We're not broken, we're on a journey of growth. Please note that this conversation should not be taken as medical or professional advice. See the link in the description below if you require immediate help.
Every week, we unpack what it means to choose joy. Not the loud version that Karen is peddling, but the quiet, hard-earned kind that comes from finally feeling like yourself again.
Let's keep this conversation going. Join us on Discord or connect to a peer through Kindred. Let's get into it.
This is really going to be a continuation of our last episode. Deeper dive. I think deeper dive is probably the better way of
It's
saying.
in the sim universe.
Yeah, they're closely related, but we gave a very high-level overview last time we spoke, and I would like to go into a few more things because we made some claims last time, and I'm pretty sure that if you're anything like me, you're like, well, if I don't have any control over it, what's the point? Or maybe I just need to work harder to find what it is that fits me. These guys are sitting there and saying, oh, hey, it's not your fault, but at the same time, you have something to do about it. So I really want to talk a little bit more about that something to do about it, because we are far from hopeless in these matters. And so we don't want people to be confused. We want them to maintain a semblance of understanding and what it is that we can actually go about and do about these things, which is awesome. So we're really going to be talking a lot about agency. There are some interesting things that I was thinking about when coming up with the episode of why do we have such a high tendency to blame systems? And where is that hang up of, well, it's just the system. There's nothing we can do about it anyway. And thinking about it, I was thinking about, well, if it's a system, that means it's something much bigger than me. I have enough trouble changing me. How in the world am I going to change a system? There's also some level of despair and hopelessness in that of, well, this thing is just too big. What am I going to do? What do I have the power to do? And I do think that we underestimate just what it is that we can do. And without getting too far down a different rabbit hole, I don't even want to go down that road. Never mind. I'm sure we'll get there. We'll get there throughout the season. But it does change the conversation a little.
I'll push back a little. I don't think we underestimate what we can do. I think we misunderstand what we can do. I think people have because I think underestimate means you think you can do something, but you're like, I feel hopeless. To me personally, I think what happens is you are within the system and you don't know how to navigate the system. So you don't know what you specifically are able to achieve. So you misunderstand how you function within that system and how you can possibly topple that system down. To me, that's how I view it as.
No, I'll take that. I think we're saying the same thing no matter what.
Yeah.
You probably just, I'll take whatever works. If you watch a lot of movies, maybe not, you don't even have to watch a lot. You just watch some American movies. That's the center. The center of the idea is, well, there's this major system, but one of the biggest struggles is what do I have to do about it? And usually there's some huge gesture, and we're not talking about anything like that. That's a much more romanticized aspect of things that we're not really getting towards. Our goal is small, measurable changes that you can make that will relieve some of that hopelessness or relieve some of that, well, let me just keep grinding. Let me just keep going. Let me just keep, because I don't think that either of those are the answer. When I hear agency, I think of having complete control. This is my responsibility. I can do something about it. And what is really, really interesting as I've gotten older throughout this lifetime is I've realized that I have almost zero fucking control. Why? Not because I don't know what to do, but because of the way that the systems of my life are in place.
Hmm.
Now, does that mean that I am completely powerless?
Yeah.
No, of course not, because total control is power. That's not responsibility. Power and responsibility, while they should go hand in hand, don't always. And so with total control, you assume power. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the responsibility that comes with accepting and working within the constraints of the system.
Yeah.
I, to give you an idea, for a long time, man, I always used to think that I had to fight the system.
Hmm.
I had to tear it down. And that can be a really powerful way of growing, tearing down the whole system, but it's just not realistic. I might have a system in place on a local level that I can go ahead and take care of. But as we start getting into macro level systems, there's no, I'm not, I'm not toppling that system of
Hmm.
oppression or system of whatever. It's just not going to happen. And so, what do I need to do? I need to go ahead and, again, just work within those confines. And I do think that in modern psychology, we do kind of give this promise of, well, you're going to have control over your thoughts, especially CBT. That's genuinely the premise is we're going to go ahead, we're going to analyze your thoughts, and then boom, we're going to get it. But then what happens when that system doesn't deliver? Psychotherapy promises us really over feelings and how we process those emotions, but that also tends to fail. So what happens when that system fails? And by fail, I don't mean that this therapy is useless. I don't mean CBT is useless. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is we get to point X, but we need to get to point Z. We need to get to point C, but we only hit point A, point 5, whatever the case is. So how is it then that we rectify not having complete control over a system that we know is going to fail us? And
Yeah.
these are uh, a limitation of our current understandings of everything is really all I would chalk it up to. I don't think that people were
Yeah.
malicious when they were whatever, Freud was on cocaine or whatever, but like I've read a couple of them. There was a lot of self-insight that he thought was
Wait. Wait.
accurate, and
No.
that's cool. And I just think it's a limitation. It's not something super huge. And so I really want to get away from this definition of agency as control. Agency is not the same as control. Agency is this idea of freedom to be able to choose how to interact in the manner with which we are seeking. I like that better than anything, because if I'm operating inside of a so I guess the best example, and maybe this one's a little extreme, is people who go into the prison system. You go into this prison system, somebody there, I'm not telling you it's very often, but it does happen where somebody either finds religion, they find knowledge, they start pursuing something else. And when they come out, they're productive members of society, whatever that looks like to them, but they don't re-enter the prison system is really the biggest goal. So these are people whose entire bits of control have been stripped of them entirely, but they still had enough agency to be able to go in to that system and work within the constraints to pull themselves to a different level. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
And that is really what I want us to understand as agency. It is not the control over outcome. It is skillfully moving within constraints. And I think that if we focus on where it is we can move within those constraints, it changes our whole entire mode of being. I remember when I don't know if you remember, it was, I don't know, was it a year ago, year and a half? I don't know. A whole weird Kanye fucking, uh, why can't I think of the word, Carlos?
because you're ill right now. You are not
Mm,
100%.
yeah, that's true.
There's so many
Incident,
things. I'm trying
the,
to think.
the,
There's so many things with that, man. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to narrow it down.
right.
What you,
It was the DEFCON 5 situation.
okay.
Yeah. So I was genuinely intrigued as to how is it that people can take this on or say something along these lines. And so I started listening to some of the interviews that he did, and there's one and only one thing that I think that I agreed with him on. The rest was all nonsense. But he was like, engineering should be a mandatory class in schools. And I fully agree with that. Why? Not because um I want people to go and build shit or do mass amounts of math that probably they're never going to use. I don't care, but you need to learn how to work within constraints to be able to solve problems. That is a really, really big deal. I also think that that's one of the major failures of art class in high schools, and below, but it makes no difference. We don't need to go into that yet either. When people are like, oh, art is just making pretty pictures, you're like, okay, whatever. I don't need to talk to you anymore. Go for it.
No, no, I was going to say, like, I think sometimes, like, like, art is, like, free and, but no, artists work within certain constraint. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody can become an artist because if it's just whatever is painted is quote unquote art, then we're all artists. But there are certain frames and certain constraints that you have to follow.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily follow, but
Yes.
the piece has to fall into for it to be viewed as high art. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
a level of skill or something within whatever the piece is that makes it like
Yeah. The good ones tell a very similar story that you're already like used to and expecting. Well, I'll never forget man being in art school and people coming up with these outrageous fucking meanings for their pieces. Some kid had a dead deer skull with a bunch of twigs around it and like red paint all over the place. And when I say that, what do you think of almost instantly?
morbid,
Death, right? But you know what they tried to sit there and bullshit as? No, this is about life. Yeah, maybe if I can spin it, but that's not successfully working inside of the constraints. If I'm working with inside of some constrained system and I'm trying to convey message X, but I end up conveying message Y, that is an unsuccessful attempt at working inside of the constraints. The most successful pieces of art that I've seen work incredibly well within the constraints in order to convey the message that it was that they were intended to. And this, go for it.
I was gonna say, I remember it was early last year. There was a story. This girl, she did like part series about how she was showing different paintings and she said she got like E's on it. And to the naked eye, they're beautiful. They looked good. We will consider good art. But
Mm-hmm.
then one person in what's it called? One person in the comment, that's what made me think they're like, did you ever question why you may have gotten a C? Was this what your professor was looking for? It's not that just because it's aesthetically beautiful or aesthetically there's some kind of things to it. There is a rubric. Were you following that rubric? Or did you just wanted to do this because you are good at it and you think it's gonna look good? And then you try to spin it as whatever the criteria was then, and then your professor was like, not buying it for therefore you got the C and not necessarily the
Mm-hmm.
A you thought you were gonna get because it looked good.
Yeah. And it's very important to remember that just because we want to have control and just because we want to be able to do these things does not mean that we operate within the constraints effectively in order to make that happen. And so I'm going to come back to this idea of power because control is power. Agency is really more about adaptability. And we hear this a lot God only knows who the fuck said it first, but I know a lot of the time it gets associated with Bruce Lee. But this idea of being like water. So what does water do? It flows. That's just how it operates. It keeps going. What does it do when it hits a rock in its path? Well, it just changes form and goes right around. And that is more so what it is that we are discussing instead of controlling every little thing. When I think of control, I think a lot of manipulation. And we're not talking about manipulation. We're not getting there. We are literally just saying, hey, I'm going to do this
I can
thing.
move pieces within the thing and to make whatever desired result I want. That's what we talked about. Yes, like then it goes
Yes,
into
and
a good idea of also manipulation, but different things.
right, but it's more like, all right, so let me rephrase that. When I think of control, I think of manipulation with malicious intent. Uh to some extent we're constantly manipulating our environment. We're constantly manipulating the world around us. It's just whether or not, like I said, when I think of manipulation, I always think of negative intent, but it doesn't always have to be a negative intent. It is really just about learning how to move inside of an ever-changing, constantly evolving system that I don't know. I don't know how to finish that yet. I'll get there. But for the moment, let's think about this as learning the terrain with which you operate in and effectively moving within it for you. Again, it comes back to for you, because we're not talking just about school systems. We're not talking just about these control systems. Some of them are means of control. Prison is a means of control. School, technically, can be considered a means of control, whichever way you want to look at it. But I'm talking about in your overall system of life. There's a flow and there's a system that is going on that guides your life on a much larger scale than any of those. And so what we're talking about is learning that terrain and moving within it so that you get the best outcome for you, not for, damn, I don't like saying that either, but that's okay. I was going to say not for other people, but ideally, when you are doing these things, there is some level of other people at play. Ideally.
Ideally, yeah. Like, but I think it's the idea of if you do it for you, then it can be reflected for other people. Because it's that thing of if you're unhappy, you'll make people around you unhappy. So if you get there, I think it's weird. I think it's both an unintended consequences of when you do it for other people, but you also taking other people into account when you do it. So it, I don't know how to quite phrase that yet. Doing it as a result of it, doing it for other people as well. Because when you had said that, I was saying that yes, there is some involvement of people in it, but as a not re- it's that thing of when you do it for yourself, and then because you've done the work yourself, it then can benefit others. So you're not necessarily doing it for other people, but then I was saying, but you do take people into account when you start doing the work. So that's where I was trying to say I don't word it.
Yeah, and so this was part of the problem that I had with the personal well-being episode that we did in season 1. When I say do things for you and make it personalized, there has to be a moral boundary there, because if not, if it's solely based off of hedonistic pleasures, it's not, none of this works. If I'm just like, well, I'm just going to do whatever it is that I want to do because that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going and I don't know, fucking shooting dope and doing all sorts of dumb shit because, well, that's just what's making me no, man. You have to operate within moral confines. Again, the problem with that is those moral confines are entirely up to you as well.
Yeah,
Um,
this would be my point. That
I
this
there's
like who
no right. There's no way around that one. However, when we kind of focus on that awareness and focus on us, we're going to learn what those morals are pretty quickly anyway. And so, yes, we may start off by doing things solely for ourselves, but I do genuinely believe that if we go down that path and we kind of keep going, in order to take it further, we're going to have to find out where it is me intersects with other people and what it is that I have to offer other people. Because I think when we approach it that way, when we approach it with like, what do I have that is worthwhile to kind of help out others, we see much faster results and more efficient results than as in just strictly focused on us. Because again, we're learning we are learning that terrain, and other people are a part of that terrain. They're involved in that system, and so we have to operate within that system in order to move effectively and efficiently. We are not trying to eliminate constraint, because eliminating constraint is nothing more than control. We are saying, hey, we see these constraints. We are going to go ahead and move effectively so that we can effectively navigate life's system. Okay. Now, the one thing that I want everybody to understand, while morals
Mhm.
play a role in all of this, agency is not a moral compass, and it's not directly tied to your morals. The personalized aspect of this lies in morals, but the agency and the freedom to be able to move is not anything. There's no moral concept tied to it. You are responsible for how you move within the system. You have that.
Yeah.
It is not your fault if you do not move correctly within that system, especially at this moment in time, because it's not a core teaching. We don't teach that. We don't tell people to operate efficiently within a system. We don't teach them. That's not how that operates. So how can you be responsible for that? I don't want people to feel like they blame themselves because they're like, "Oh, well, I should have known better." No, you shouldn't have. You definitely shouldn't have. These are things that have taken me a lifetime to come to the understanding of, and they are directly related to my twisted view of the world as I was growing up. It's if we blame ourselves for any aspect of this, we can't change. We can never reach agency while still blaming ourselves. Just because we make a mistake, it is what it is. I was talking with a buddy about that the other day because he was like, "Well, I went for this job interview and it didn't land so well, and it was with a defense company." And I was like, "Well, that
Mhm.
defense company wants you to be able to make decisions in the moment because that's a very uh, it's a very militaristic mindset. There's a bunch of shit happening. You got 30 seconds to make a decision. Whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. Make that decision and see it through to the end. There's a lot of the times there's no more that we can do about that because we don't know how it's going to come out. The best thing that we can do is take the chance, go for it, and learn from the mistakes. Now, in military, you have much more severe consequences than if you're trying to figure out how to navigate the fucking schoolyard. But it's not a fault thing. It's not there to make you feel bad. It's there to get you to learn and think differently and take different actions and go from place to place and navigate it successfully without causing harm to you or to others around you. And that's a big thing that I really want to make sure of too. As long as you are not causing harm to yourself or other individuals, chances are you're going to be okay. If you are causing harm to others around you, you need to rethink those things immediately because that then becomes moral and makes it a
Yeah.
problem. But the actual agency itself is really just shifting the pieces, man. Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, I was gonna say it only becomes moral if they view harming others as not part of as immoral. If they view it as if harming others is moral to them, then they'll continue on that behavior. I want to make that distinction.
Right, but we also call those sociopaths. So I, that's not
But
that's
those do
not
exist.
a core listener group, Carlos.
You don't know you don't know who's out there. Okay, do not
No, I know.
underestimate the listening population.
No, I get it. I understand what you're saying. You are correct, but that is also most of us. I feel have some level
Yeah,
of
most of us do not fall into that criteria. I will admit that there is a tedious small population of people who seek help. But yeah,
right. Okay, so just to give you some examples, because we've talked at a very abstract level of all of these things, and how does this work? How do I navigate this? I think parenting is one of the best examples I can give because I have absolutely zero control over the person that my kid
right?
I have influence. I definitely have influence. I'm not going to take that. If I don't have influence, then everything that we're talking about is complete bullshit.
Yeah,
But I can't control his constraints, and his constraints are baked into his fucking DNA, and I'm not going to be able to change or alter them. The best thing that I can do is see how he responds to these situations and then determine how to proceed from there appropriately. So, if he's having trouble with, I don't know, test taking or whatever, cool, man, let's teach you some strategies to go to have how to navigate those things. It's not like, oh, well, you just need to study for an extra 6 hours. It may not be that he needs to study for an extra 6 hours. It may just be that he needs to learn some new, again, trying to remove those constraints versus trying to work with the system. I think that's a really good one. But I also think
yeah,
that when we're dealing with mental health routines, some of them don't work in all contexts. I can't just, if I'm in the middle of some crazy ass social situation, in no way, shape, or form can I just fucking sit down and start meditating. It'll be fucking weird. It's gonna look weird. It's not, that might be the routine that I have though when my anxiety starts to flare up, let me go sit quietly for a little bit. That may not be an option. So then I have to go ahead and be aware enough to say, and I understand that these are extreme examples, but
not
they're just to
really.
highlight and
I
accentuate the point. Sitting
I
down
would
in a crowded room
disagree.
full of people and
Uh,
starting to meditate, I feel like is pretty extreme.
but I think it gets to it gets the idea of the point with because I think those two things also with the parenting goes also ties in with the agency and the lack of control because you have the agency to be practicing mindfulness, to be doing meditating, or even let's even bring it down to metaphysical levels. You're eating well, you are exercising, you are doing all these things
Hmm.
that would on average will guarantee you a longer life choice. But you are not in control of when you get a heart attack because heart attacks, while there is a good indicative of poor lifestyle choices can lead to a heart attack, there are completely normal, healthy people that wake up and get a heart attack. You don't have control over that. That's just something that randomly happens. You can't really do anything about it. And same thing with the mental, you're going about your day, you are practicing what you need to practice, but there's a crazy event that happens. You necessarily don't have any, because if you didn't cause the event, you don't have any major control over that. You are just happening to pass by and said event happened. So then it's how do you navigate that? So yes, plopping yourself down and doing the breathing techniques or whatever it needs, that is extreme, but it does set the example of what could happen, things that could happen, and how we can go about dealing with it.
You are you are definitely right. It is more about the things that happen than the way that we handle it. But the way that we introduce agency into that is, okay, I know that this is what works. How can I make smaller changes to be able to make that work within that situation? That's kind of where I was getting at with the parenting thing. And that's definitely where I was getting at with the mental health stuff. Again, I'm not going to just plop right down. I'm going to find a quiet place to kind of reset. I'm going to breathe a little bit. I'm probably not going to sit down with my eyes closed, but I am going to do something. I may not even be able to go find a quiet place, and I might just start doing box breathing right there. Nobody's going to know. I'm just going to be sitting there counting 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm telling you, I do that before every single public speaking event that I ever have to do, and it changes how I show up and how I respond to those speaking events each and every single time.
Yeah.
So I think we do this quite often without realizing it, especially in work situations, because depending on where you are on the totem pole, you don't have a lot of control. And so a lot of times you just have to show up and do what it is that you need to do. It's not a matter of, do I have control over this decision? No. So I guess I better start working on it and figuring out how to make it work. Why don't we recognize it that way? I don't think we think about it. I don't think that it's a common... Number one, I don't think that we place a lot of importance on responsibility. We do, but typically that's mostly financial. We do have some in terms
I
of
think
emotional.
we only place responsibility when something goes wrong. Like if something goes wrong, then you're like, well, you should have thought of this, and this, and why did you do this? Why did you do that? But like things are going okay and you're making not necessarily the most responsible choices, or things are going well or okay, then you're like, okay, it's working, but I don't need to think about it. You only kind of think about it when something kind of goes off the track and you're like, well, why should I have that done? Like when you're talking to people be like, did you think about this? Did you do this? Why didn't you do this? What? Like that's when it becomes a thing.
I agree. And I think that's a kind of a perfect segue into why we like control so much. And I think there's a couple of reasons. I think that there is a major cultural aspect to it, but I think that that cultural aspect is built on just the way inherently our brain works. If we look at predictive processing, the goal of our brain is to minimize prediction errors. We like certainty. We do not... The brain it has to expend more energy in order to make those predictions. And as we get older and our energies start to dwindle and decline a little bit, because you see this more in older adults than you do in younger. Especially, I talk to the kids about this at the high school level, and I'm like, right now you guys are living in a system that you get to react to. When you get out of here and you have responsibilities, things that you have to handle, the energy goes there first before dealing with the reactions. And what I'm kind of getting at is, we don't want to just wait for that to happen. We need to understand that it's okay to want control. It's just not always going to be feasible. And what does that look like when we have a lack thereof? Our culture rewards things like mastery, but even mastery, if anybody who is a master, most of them will tell you it's not about control. That's a common misconception. We think that being productive and optimizing all of these things is going to be the answer. And I don't know that that's right and or possible. There are limits with which we hit each and every single day, but we have expectations that are well beyond these limits. And so we must learn to work within those limits. I really do think it is biological to reduce that energy consumption,
Yeah.
and to focus on things that we can control, to focus on things that we know are going to outcome. But the answer to agency is outside of that. It is responding to the actual inputs rather than just operating and making decision based clear out of habit, right? That is how we take control. That is how, no, that is how we recover agency, right? That is
Yeah.
how we
Yeah.
avoid unpleasantness effectively. And so, and we'll put these up because I think that these are super important. We'll give you those reflection prompts. And again, I'm being very intentional about not giving anything super tangible or super concrete yet. We will get there. I want to make sure that we understand the foundations before we really start getting in there, and that we have that level of awareness to start making those incremental changes. So some reflection prompts that I think are really, really useful. And modify them as you need. We'll put them in the description. Where in your life are you demanding control instead of practicing navigation? Or maybe flexibility. Navigation's okay, but I really think flexibility is better, because that's really what we're talking about, is demonstrating a flexible
Mhm.
mindset. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's really what I'm thinking of as agency, is this idea of a flexible mindset. We've got limitless mindset, and I think that flexibility is the key to reaching limitless mindset, because once you're flexible, you realize that you can respond and you can achieve a whole lot of things. But that's for another time. We'll go down that road at some other
Yeah.
point in time. Not a big deal. Identifying where you want that control versus where you are trying to be flexible. And when you can understand the difference between the two, that's when you can start making those changes. What's a situation where you could shift from fixing to adjusting? And I can assure you, I will be asking myself that exact same goddamn question as soon as we hang up this, because I just thought of
Yeah.
something. But hey, that's all good. Where are you already more capable than you give yourself credit for? And I think that this is a big one, because this is a piece of our agency. This is a piece of our purpose. This is a piece of our hope. Where is it that you specifically shine that other people may not? And I don't have that answer for anybody. I know where mine was, and since then all I've been doing is developing them. Since I figured that out and really kind of looked at that, I sit there and I take time each and every day to develop those traits that nobody, not that nobody else has, but they may not have in the same combination that I have. These are just for some reflective prompts. And again, the whole theme of this season is more will be revealed as we go on, I promise. But like I said, I wanted to do these more deeper dives into these things so that we can really understand the mechanics of what is happening. We want to break up all of those failure narratives that we tell ourselves. If you're anything like me, I had tons of them, okay? Still probably have a couple rooting around somewhere in there, but
I got
those
plenty.
I'm sorry?
I said I got plenty of those.
Right. And those self-fulfilling narratives are going to be what hold us back every single time. And agency and flexibility are really going to be the way to navigate. And so I think the other thing that we have to keep in mind, and that we are definitely going to begin to talk about, is why is it that it is so hard for us to understand agency as a means of a way forward? And it kind of ties in with this idea of effort feeling invisible. We can put forth effort for days, months, years, whatever, if we're working towards some sort of long-term goal and not see a goddamn bit of
Yeah.
reward at all. But agency requires that we keep navigating in that way. Because if we're not operating out of agency, we're not operating flexibly, then we're not working towards those more long-term goals. And really that's kind of where we're at, is we're talking about long-term mental health goals, super, super long-term, not immediate. I'm in trauma. I need to get out. How do we live a productive, I don't even want to say productive. How do we live the life that we are going to get the most satisfaction out of? Let's go there mentally and emotionally. Um, And I really want to get away from this idea that this is just tied to some sort of personal failure. It's not. This is not a personal shortcoming. Um, we are learning currently how to deal with all of these things. Give yourself a break, take some time, and we will definitely get to all of these things. Honestly, this is going to be the goal of next episode, is to knock all of those out.
I think our main takeaway is you don't need control. You don't need to have more control over your life or at certain aspects of your life. What you need, I think, is you need to have a better relationship or work better within constraints that already exist. You need to find a way to navigate those systems. And if you don't get it right the first time, or you are having confusion about how agency and you think you have agency, those are not personal. They're not personal failures. You are just learning and still navigating the system. This is not going to be like a 1 week situation thing. This is a work in progress. Again, as you said a few minutes ago, it's something for long-term mental health use. And it's not just going to be a one quick fix day. I'm gonna master this technique and then boom, the next day I'm good. It's about keep working, always changing, and learning how your environment and those constraints are affecting. I think I want to bring one quick key thing is it's this idea of like the fallacy of choice. So the fallacy of choice is when you think you have more choices that you actually do, and so you may not you may think you have these certain choices, but in the end you may think you have five choices when you're making a plan, but in reality realistically you probably only have two, and then you choose between those two. But when you think about your choices or what you choose to do, you'll be like, oh, I have all these other things, and why didn't I go with that? But realistically, you couldn't have gone with that. It's again, it's that understanding those constraints, because if you understood those constraints, you would have realized those were not really realistic choices for
Mhm.
you to begin with. And then that can take some of that pressure off when you do make you when you do have that agency and you make a choice or you make a decision that is not a personal failure. You were just maybe limited in what you needed to do, and you went with the best choice at the time.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Carlos and I greatly appreciate it. Comment something that resonated with you today. We are here for support, feedback, or anything else that you want to share. Join us on the Kindred app, a perfect space to keep unpacking what came up during the episode. Get live, peer-to-peer support from people with shared experiences. Kindred is built for those moments that no one else sees.
Take this one step deeper by reviewing today's reflection prompt in the show notes. Please don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and tune in next week for a new episode. Until next time, choose joy.